So the recording has now officially started. So can we get the show of hands again that everyone is happy with the recording? Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. So the session is on jobs descriptions, and it will be Rachel from Jobs Australia who will be running it. If everyone, just one little note, and that's if anyone has any questions during the session, if you wouldn't mind just putting your hands up quickly, and I'll just call on you, and Rachel will be able to answer as we go on. If people want to save questions till the end as well, that's also fine. So what I'll do is I'll share my presentation with you, and then over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Mahela. Let's wait for that presentation to come on. So as I was saying, ladies and gents, this is fantastic technology, but it is our first go at it, so bear with me. I've been instructed to continue looking at the camera, so hopefully I'm talking directly at you. So today, as Mahela said, we're going to talk about job descriptions. I know that some of you may have attended one of our the first workshop, which was around awards. And today we're looking at the job descriptions. Thanks, Mahela. So Linkwest, along with Jobs Australia, is delivering the HRIR Support for You Community Resource Centres. And it's a great opportunity today as we're talking about job descriptions. Now, I should say at the outset, you might hear me say JD or PD, so job description or position description. I'm actually referring to exactly the same thing. I guess it's one of those things, depends which school you went to. So we're going to have a look at what is a job description and why do we need them. And then after we've had a look at why do we need them, we'll look at classifications and where they become relevant in those classifications. Then we've got, hopefully you all received the resources this morning, and we've produced a quick guide template, and we'll go through that template. That'll give you the opportunity to kind of work through what a real job description would look like, or what we say is a good form of a job description, and then we can have some examples from there and we can work through that. So if any questions come up, great opportunity. As Mahela said, feel free at any time during this session to ask me a question. Just raise your hand. Mahela is going to be my little helper there, and if people have got questions, Mahela is going to point that out to me. It is a good opportunity for you to get as much out of today, and as I said, you've already been set up in terms of attending the workshop around awards. Today's session will really help you for the coming sessions as well. So I know one of them in the future is looking at performance management. And when we start to talk about performance management, it's really important that we've got good job descriptions to rely on. So that's just one key element as well. Thanks, Mahela. So, as I said, today's all about job descriptions. Thanks, Mahela. Beautiful. Okay, so what is a job description? So when we drill down into it, a job description is really an outline of your key tasks, duties and responsibilities. So it should be as easy as outlining exactly what you want someone to do within that role. Of course, there's some other things that we're going to work our way through as well. But if I look at a job description or position description, it should be as easy as someone being able to pick up that job description and have a fair understanding of what they need to do on a daily sorry, I lost it for a moment there. What they need to do within their role, both as an overall list of tasks and duties, and really what someone does on a daily basis. And we'll have a look at that in a second. Should also be a summary of the skills, the knowledge and the attributes that are required to complete that position. So always keeping in mind it's about the position, it's not actually about the person. So what is it? In objectively looking at the role, what is it that we want in that role? What skills, what knowledge, what attributes do we want that person to have? Should also contain any other relevant information that you think that the organisation might need, such as it might be that you maintain external working relationships with other organisations. Thanks, Mahela. Feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast. So, why do we use a job description? Thanks, Mahela. Obviously, developing a job description is a fantastic way for an organisation to sit down and assess exactly what they need within a position. So it's really an opportunity, and of course that's when we're first putting a role. we can sit down, we can work out what we need that person to do or what the organisation needs from that person to do. But the other key thing in this is working out, obviously we should review position descriptions, because no doubt your jobs are like mine. They don't essentially overly change from year to year, but technology changes, the type of work that we do might slightly change from now and again, and we'll have a look at that in a little bit. But there should be a review of our position descriptions to ensure that they remain current. So really developing the job description in the first place and then reviewing it on an annual basis, if you like, gives you the ability to look at, is it still current? Do I need to make changes? Thanks, Mahalo. Is there any questions, ladies or gents? Fabulous. So as we said, having a good job description allows us to look at the work that comes in and then the work that flows out and what happens in between there. So do they need to do reports to managers? Is there data that they need to extract? Is there external relationships that they need to maintain? Thanks, Mahela. And all those kinds of things. So what is it that we expect someone to do? So as I said, within the organisation, you can use a job description to confirm who does within the organisation. That tells us how each of the roles within our organisations fit. I have seen some job descriptions. You don't necessarily need to do this, but it might be useful if you're in a medium to small organisation, and to actually attach the organisational structure to that. As I said, you don't need to, but I have seen some PDs that have it in there. The reason for that is it actually sets out where does everyone fit within the organisation, and therefore you kind of align where someone's role butts up against somebody else's, and that kind of offers some sort of clarity. You also specify in the job description what are the outcomes to be expected. So what is it I actually expect someone to do? Now when I say that, I should clarify, you want to keep those expectations real. So obviously, if you expect someone to be serving customers, you wouldn't write in 3,000 customers a day, but you might write in that you expect someone to serve all of the customers within the organisation. Of course, as I said, if the boss is trying to write that, I need to answer every call that comes into the building, that might be a problem. So keep those expectations real. It also allows you, as we talked about, how each of the roles interact with each other. What are the working relationships and what level of authority do people have? And allows you to clarify how the work flows through the organisation. Now that's a great way. When you're looking at how the work flows through, that's a really good opportunity for you to then go back and assess, are there any holes? Is there something missing somewhere in the process? Should that be reflected in someone's position description? Sounds quite silly, but quite often we write position descriptions that are so broad, you actually can't cover everything. Or sorry, you cover everything, but we don't actually know what that means. So sometimes we need to break it down. What does that specific task mean, and what can I expect someone to do in that way? Thanks, Mahela. Now, obviously your job descriptions are absolutely vital when we start talking about the selection criteria. So let's say we need to appoint a new community development worker. When we write that job description is absolutely pivotal in informing whether the applicant that applies for a position is suitable, because obviously once we've written the position description, we tease out the selection criteria. So from there, we assess the position description, we can then sort out our selection criteria. Now that allows you to do two things. In the first instance, you can narrow down candidates, because obviously you've got your selection criteria. It makes it quite clear what that job is about. So you can start to weed out, if you like, can't think of a better word, people who don't necessarily fit within the attributes that your organisation is looking for that role. So if you're asking, for example, for someone with experience in community development work, and if someone applies, an applicant applies, and they've only got taxi driving, well, that would allow you to drop them off in the first instance. The other thing in having a very good position description means that will then allow you to write really good interview questions and to keep you on task. I say that because I coach people on a daily basis about, what sort of questions do we ask in an interview. And really the job description is key in asking very pointed questions in relation to that job that you're advertising for. You've got to remember too, it also allows the applicant an opportunity to assess what that role is about. So obviously, you know, they see an ad in the paper, they ring up, they get that job description. It might be that you've asked them to address key selection criteria, and that's usually a good way. But it also gives someone an understanding of what's expected in that role. Am I going to be able to do that role? Is it something that I'm going to enjoy? And we'll have a look, when we start to work through the position description, the sorts of things that will inform that as well. It also allows us, as I said, because we've set our selection criteria, it allows us to measure candidates objectively against that selection criteria. Thanks, Mahela. Now, job descriptions are also key in informing someone's learning and development. So it enables us to identify, is there training that we should be updating on a regular basis, because we know that it's in the position description. Example I like to use is first aid. So if you've got a requirement in a job description, for example, that you require someone to have their first aid certificate, obviously you're looking at that position description. We talked about possibly reviewing it. And we would say that usually on a 12-monthly basis, 12 months to 2 years is a good time frame for you to sit and have a look at those positions. Obviously, if they've got first aid training and you've got it in the position description as a requirement, that'll just allow you to remind yourself that, hey, I need to make sure that that's there. It's also really good in allowing you and the employee to identify if there's further professional development that they might be interested in, or that you're keen to send them off for, and that might enhance the skills within the workplace. And therefore, as we already talked about, that might actually amend the position description. Although we will talk in a little bit about cautioning, changing a position description is completely fine, but you never want to overly change it, taking away a whole raft of duties. And obviously the problem for that will be the fact that its classification may be affected when you change it. We'll have a look at classifications, as I said. And you also, as we said, are there qualifications that are relevant to the job? Thanks, Mahela. Okay, now this is really key, and this is setting up for a session in the future, which is that performance managing stuff. But I should say at the outset, performance management is something that nobody wants to do. However, today we're talking about the job description. So in the sense that you need to ensure that your job description is vital in setting the scene of what you expect someone to do. So it sets those benchmarks to measure performance against. So as we said, if you expect someone to serve customers and to be polite, and you expect them to do data entry, you expect them, I don't know, a whole raft of things, answer the phones, balance up at the end of the day, that's what's contained within your position description. If, for example, someone's not doing their job, or they're not doing it as well as they should be, and we need to go down the path of performance managing, then really it's the position description that we look to see, well, is that a requirement of their role? There would be nothing worse than trying to performance manage someone, for example, for not doing something and then have them say to us, what's here, it's not my position description. And incredibly, we do hear that all the time. We see that a lot where you've got someone who potentially, you've got a position description, you've got 3 key duties in it, and now you want to pull someone up for not answering complaints, but it doesn't specifically say that in my position description. So when we have a look at the PDs in a sec, we'll talk about they need to be broad, but they need to be quite specific as well. So in terms of performance management, it's, are you doing the job? Is it set out within the position description? But it also, before we get to performance management, it actually allows you an opportunity to sit down with people and provide them with feedback, both positive and negative feedback, which is a great way for them to improve and for you to pick up. They might have some feedback to give you at the same time. So it's really about setting the scene. I know it's unfortunate, nobody ever wants to do it, but it does happen. If we need to performance manage, then we've got a really good job description that we can rely on in terms of saying, well, here's what you haven't done. This is what we need to do to get you to the level we needed at. And here are the expectations clearly set out in the job description. Thanks, Mihaela. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at how does the job description interact with the classification. I'm sure you're all way more at than I am. So the classification is derived from the actual job description itself. What we say to people is classification sets out how much do we pay someone, because fundamentally that's it at the end of the day. So having a good, well-written position description allows you to get that and map that against a modern award. Now, I've got if you're a nerd like me, you carry around a copy of the SCADS award. Now, I know that in previous, the award discussion, you all had a bit of a chat about which is the applicable award. So when I'm referring to the award, most CRCs, as we've talked about, are covered by the Social, Community, Home Care and Disability Services Awards. Probably the last time you hear me say it that way. We call it the SHADS Award. And the reason we call it that, we would have no voice left if we had to use those words all the time. So when you've got a position description, you have the ability to get the award out and assess that PD, or that job description, sorry, against the classifications in the award. Now, the award has classifications from 1 to 8. The old awards no longer apply, so they've all been replaced, and we look purely to the SCADS award itself. Thanks, Mihaela. So when you're assessing a position description, as we said, most CRCs are constitutional trading corporations, which means that the Fair Work Act applies, and therefore the modern award, as I said, is the SCADS. So if you have a good position, so you've decided to advertise for a community development worker, you've now written the classification, the position description, you then get out a copy of the award and you assess where you think that PD fits. Or if you're a member, then you would send it to us and we can assist you with that. What you do is, so say for example you decide that that's a classification 4, then what we'd advocate you do is have a look at a classification 3 and have a look at a classification 5. And the reason we're doing that is to make sure that you peg that classification at the right point. Unfortunately, what we see a lot of is where employers just try to match a role, if you like, pay rate. So they bring up the pay table and they say, oh, low and offer you 60,000, that's a level 6. And we would say, look, it's not very wise to do that. What you do is you classify the role appropriately. What you then do is you can then offer over an award payment. And we'll have a look at that when we get to contracts. But I just wanted to mention that to you today. So you should always be appropriately classifying a position description or job description against the applicable award classification. And that will inform, thanks Mihaela, that will inform the correct rate of pay for that position. And always keep in mind too, one of my other favourite things is when someone classifies a person. We're not classifying the person, it's the role that we're classifying. So we pretend like we don't know who's in there. And that, I suppose, becomes more relevant when we're looking to move someone to a different role. So it's not about the person, it's always about the job itself. The job description, if we've written it well, and we'll go through one in a second, if we've written it well, then it provides us evidence of the skills and responsibilities and therefore informs the classification that we assign that. And therefore, it justifies the rate of pay. Sorry, thanks, Mihaela. Now, the award itself clearly sets out classification dimensions. They set out as characteristics, responsibilities and requirements of the award. Now really all that's getting at is under characteristics there's a generic description of what the competencies and what level of skill there is and the level of direction that's set out there. If you don't already have a copy of the award, what I would say is don't print the award because it's undergoing review at the moment, so it can change quite often. But have a look at it off the Fair Work Commission website. So that's www.fwc.gov.au, but we can always send that to you. Have a look at the classifications. They're set out in Schedule A, and you'll see where we're listing these. Then it has responsibilities, and they're really the indicative types of tasks or responsibilities are set out in the award. It also has requirements for skills and qualifications and the prerequisites, and it takes us right through each of those, as I said, from the classification 1 to the classification 8. And it's really key in us being able to assign a classification, and that's because they're set out quite clearly in the award. Do keep in mind, though, that the award is written to cover a huge raft of organisations. So it's not so specific, for example, if we're talking about the receptionist, that it will say, well, someone at this level is a receptionist. It gives you the types of duties. So if you have a look maybe at a level 2, you'll see the kinds of duties that a receptionist would come in at. Thanks, Mahela. All right, so I'm going to give you a really easy example. So we've talked about the award and we talked about classifications, and I said to you, there's a level 1 and there's a level 8. The example that we're talking about here is this is someone's level of direction. Now, for those of you that are classified probably as a level 8, I'm not, but for those of you who are level 8, if you like, a level 1 works under, you can see here we've set out, under the Modern Award, a level 1 works under close supervision. So if you think of it this way, and not necessarily, but this is just an example, someone who's a trainee would work what we would call under close supervision. So really you'd be sat there beside them, you'd be guiding them along, you would be instructing them how to do that job if you think of it that way. Whereas a level 2 you can see, and these are direct quotes taken from the award. So they work under general guidance within clearly defined guidelines. So really, that's about, there might be a handbook that tells them how to do the job or how to process a particular part of the job. At a level 2, they should be able to work under general guidance and look at the book and know how to do those things. So it might be that you set them that task as part of their morning. Okay, I want you to go and do data entry for this. There might be a book that tells them how to log onto the computer and how to enter that stuff. By the time we get to a level 3, it's worked under general direction within the application of standard procedures and guidelines. So they have a bit more of an understanding, and you can see as we go up in each level, the level of direction that I have to give someone decreases. And obviously by the time we get up to a level 8, that's usually about your CEO level. So there's very little direction, or it might be guidance from the board is the kind of things that you see at a level 8. Thanks, Mahela. The other one that I just wanted to have a look at is the skills and knowledge, and this is really key. So if you look at 1, as I said, if a 1 is, if you think of it this way, is a trainee, they have a basic knowledge of admin practices. So if they're a trainee, it might be that on day 1 you sit them down, you show them how to answer the phone. So that might be a really basic task. You might be sat in the background, and for the next, however long, you're basically sat there directing them and telling them what to do. You can see by the time we move up to a level 2, they have a knowledge of the established work practices. So it doesn't mean they have a huge level of responsibility and authority, but they have some understanding of how the workplace works. And if we think about the receptionist, they have an understanding of how to answer the phone and how to take phone messages. By the time we get to a level 3, it's really a thorough knowledge of that of the work activities. Now, not to be confused, that doesn't make them a level 8, which a level 8 is likely to have strategic overall coverage of the organisation and obviously the input as well. So does that make sense to people? You can see the differences between a 1, a 2 and a 3, and we just picked those out as 3 of the easiest. Just to give you an understanding of how you would go about classifying, and then how each of the classification descriptions can be completely different moving up in the scale. And obviously that informs your classification and your rate of pay. Thanks, Mahela. Okay, so now we're going to get to the fun bit. I know you've all been waiting for this. Hopefully you've had a chance today to print out a copy of the template job description. So what we've put together for you is just some tips and obviously the template around the key elements of the job description. So I just thought instead of necessarily going through the slides, what we'll do is we'll work through this position description or this job description, and that gives you a great opportunity to see how these things work. But before we get started, I just wanted to talk to you about a job description is really just an accurate overview. Now, the example that I like to use, I should be able to get the husband in here tomorrow, give him my PD, and while he may not know exactly what he needs to do in the day, he should have a basic understanding, and I do use that because he would be useless at our job, but anyway. We get him in, and it should give him the foundation of what he'd be expected to do in the day. So he'd be expected to answer phone calls, answer email queries, etc. He might not know all the relevant details, but it should inform roughly what I would do in a day. We would say that the position description, firstly, a key thing, it needs to be written in plain English. Sometimes I see people send me in a position description for assessment and they've tried to make it sound really high level, or they've tried to make it sound like they're really good at writing stories. I've got to tell you, that has a huge effect on a position description. When you've got a level 2 receptionist and you use massive words about this long, that can push that classification up to about a 6, so you really want to be aware of those things. For example, if the receptionist takes the banking off to the bank, that is probably still within a classification 2. However, if you give her overall strategic responsibility for all banking, you can see the higher language I use, and yeah, I do see those things sometimes. The higher the language you use, obviously, if I read that against the award, that might make it look like a higher classification. So you do need to be aware of that. So plain English is a really good thing. As I said, there needs to be enough detail in it so that someone can pick it up and have a pretty good understanding of what they're expected to do within the day. But it also needs to be broad enough to cover as many of the tasks, the duties, the responsibilities, etc., that you would want them to do. So in looking at our position description, obviously, other than our job title and our name, etc., we put the position content. Thanks, Mahela. The position content, if you think of it this way, is what is your organisation about? So, for example, what I'm working at the moment, they're an eating disorder clinic, so they put in there that the position is responsible for the provision of social welfare in relation to blah, blah, eating disorder issues within the community. So you might just put a generic statement about what your organisation is about. Does it need to be war and peace? And I've got to say at the outset too, guys, you don't want to make a position description any more than about 2 pages. I've seen some that run to 6, 7 pages, and I'm sure they've only padded it out to make themselves look better. You really don't need to do that. Remember, we said it needs to be clear, succinct, and quite precise. It needs to be broad but generic as well, so you don't want to list everything. They don't need to know they go in, log on, they sign in, and then they do this and they do this. They just need to know what's expected in a day, and we'll go through that. So then we move on to the purpose and function. Oh, sorry about that. My screen keeps flicking. So the purpose and function is really what is the purpose of this role? What's the main? It'll have our job title. What's the purpose? Are we expected to have community service skills, etc.? So what is that role really about? Thanks, Mahela. So then we move on to the main duties and responsibilities. And really, we set out the general responsibilities and then the specific responsibilities. So, for example, the general responsibilities, that's the stuff we were talking about, work within the philosophy of. I expect that you'll answer X many calls. I expect that you'll do this, this and this. Does that make sense to people? Yeah. Beautiful. So that's the kind of stuff that we want people to be doing. And then we can drill that down even further. So if we wanted to say, for example, that it's someone's job to answer the phones, you can put on there, well, what is it that you expect them to do with that call? Because it's all good to say someone answers the phone. For our receptionist, for example, her position description has answer calls and divert to the relevant IR advisor. So you can see we can enhance those kinds of things there. Is there any questions? you're either so good that you've got it, or I just talk too much. That's probably more relevant.
Just one little point, and it's Mihaela here. Because I can't actually see every single CRC on my screen, so if anyone has a question, if you just want to just maybe say the name of your CRC, and then we'll stop for the question. But is everyone okay for the time being? Everyone happy?
Yep.
Yes? Okay, brilliant. Over to you.
Fantastic. All right, so then we go on to, thanks Mihaela, the next one. We go on to organisational management and teamwork, and really what that's about is, well, one has changed, one hasn't changed. That's our expectations of things like we expect them to participate in staff meetings, we want them to carry out, next one Mihaela. Thank you. So we need people to attend staff meetings, development workshops, you report to the committee, for example, that might be important in your area, or we need them to supervise clerical trainees or volunteers within the centre, which is really big within sort of our sector. The other one you'll see on the template is other relationships. So it might be that we expect them to maintain good, positive working relationships with external third parties, or it might be the department, for example. Whatever that is, that's what you should write into there. Thanks, Mihaela. Then we go on to the selection criteria. So what is it? Qualifications and skills. What do you want someone to have? So if you want them to have a certificate in, for example, macrame, then that's where you would put that down. The other thing, the only thing I'd caution you here is if you ask for a degree, for example, in rocket science, and you use it, that would be great. We'll recognise that in the classifications. But if I don't ask for something here and then I have an expectation down the track, you can see that those two aren't going to work. So that's why this document becomes absolutely key in any dispute or any issue that will ever arise. It's the position description, and of course when we start to look at contracts, those two documents alone will be absolutely vital in anyone's employment relationship. So really we're big on making sure that you get those job descriptions right in the first place. If you're asking for, it might be that, and what I see a lot of the time is what's relevant is a degree in community development work or relevant experience. So you are able to do those. It might be that you put a qualifier of minimum of 5 years experience working within the sector. You're entitled to do that, so that's where you would list that. Then the other thing is like the skills. So it might be that I know I have a certificate for in workplace development, but you might have an expectation that I can use Microsoft Office or Microsoft PowerPoint or whatever the case may be. That's where you would write that in there. Usually key in here is to put sound, verbal and written communication skills. Thanks, Mihaela. If you had any, and you don't need to do this, but for example, if you had any...
I've got a question. Pinjarra.
Yes, go for it.
You know, I find it interesting that that you're sort of saying to put in there words like sound, verbal and written communication. We actually had a bit of a problem with that because you can't quantify what sound is.
Yeah.
So you have the specificness of what it is how important is that to you, the overall big scheme.
And again, that comes back to remembering these are only a template that we're looking at. But I do 100% get your point. That you would need to tailor that for you. So it might be that you're willing to support someone within an organisation, or in fact that that's not so key to you. What is important to you is that someone has experience within the sector, if you like.
Yeah.
It's really going to come down to, and you're right, I'm not great at subjective words because sound, as you pointed out, is very subjective. How do I measure that? I'm more of a fan of writing in, but if we're writing in generic, remember I said to you we should have a generic statement. Oh, and I should have said to you, I think it comes up later, but whenever you write a position description, of course, we should all remember the catch-all phrase is, or other duties as directed. So I just wanted to point that out while we're here. Because that will allow me to tell someone that, oh, by the way, you'll also do this as well. But we'll have a look at that in a second as well. But Picking your point, absolutely. You could say a basic understanding. It really comes down to how you write that. And really, it's not vital for me, but it might be vital for your organisation. So you'll need to sit and make a decision about that. Thanks for that. Great question. So when we're talking about the environment and physical, it might be that you've got someone working outside in 45 degrees, and you might think, well, that's going to be pretty hard work. I'm going to put that in the position description. The reason that you'd be putting that, obviously, in the position description is when someone's looking to decide whether they apply for a position or not, they can see that that's in there. They're under no illusions. They know what they're applying for. Or some of the other examples you can see, it's expected that you'll work within customer service, you'll sit at a desk, it's office bound. As I say, these aren't die-in-the-ditch things, but if they can inform someone making a decision. Thanks, Mahela. So in terms of the selection criteria, you break it down to what's essential and what's desirable, and getting back to the qualifications. So it might be that you want me to have a 4-year degree in community development work, but it may be, can you see the difference? It might be desirable that I have a driver's licence, or it might be desirable that I have a first aid certificate. The essential is, well, I won't go below this, otherwise you won't meet the criteria, whereas it might be that the desirable stuff is say, for example, the computer stuff. It's desirable that you know how to use our in-house system here. You wouldn't know how to, but we could write that in, or we could say that we will teach you how to do those things. So the driver's license, it might be that, well, it might be handy in someone's work. Obviously, if we were talking about a bus driver, just to be silly, you can see our driver's license, I'm just showing you, a driver's license would move up from desirable to essential if we're talking about someone who's going to go around and pick up the clients, for example. Thanks, Mahela. So I don't want to bang on too much other than to say conditions of employment are really covered within someone's contract of employment. So I just wanted to say that what you might do is set out in the in the position description itself that all terms and conditions of employment are based on the SCADS award, or just to pull my own self up, it may not be the SCADS award. Obviously, it can only be SCADS if the classifications are the applicable classifications. And as we talked about, you'd have a look at Schedule B, see if the classification descriptions can cover me. If we're using the example of the bus driver, you'll note that classification descriptions in the SCADS award can't cover bus drivers, so we need to therefore go and find the relevant award. That's why I say that. So in this part of the position description or the job description, we would just name the relevant award. You don't need to restate the conditions of those awards, because remember, you've got that other document which will be the employment contract, and we'll have a look at that next time. You might also have that salary packaging is provided for within your organisation. Again, that may be restated in the contract of employment, and we'll have a look at that down the track. But if there's anything specific, I'll give you another example. If you expect to work with children check, you might want to put that in the position description. You might, if we go back one page, I don't need you to move though, Mahela, that's all good. You might put it in as either essential or desirable. Someone might come to you with one. You might put it under essential and then they don't come with one, so you'll organise that, or whatever the case may be. But it really depends on each organisation, and as we said, it's your opportunity to sit down and assess those position descriptions and work out what it's going to be that's necessary for you. Thanks, Mahela. So that's pretty much it. I mean, job descriptions form the foundation of job descriptions and contracts. But a job description is a great foundation for someone to determine whether they wish to apply for a job. And as I said, once someone's been in the job, it's really important to reassess those position descriptions on a regular basis. So 12 months to 2 years is usually a good opportunity. Things change. It gives you the chance to update that. As I said also, though, be very careful. If I add a whole heap of stuff, you can see that my classification to receptionist might well go further up, and obviously that has impacts, as we talked about, on the rate to pay at the same time. So always think about, well, okay, what is it that I want in the role? What has changed in the role? It's not necessarily a die in the ditch that you get someone to sign their position description, but it's always good HR practice. Walk them through the changes, talk to them about why that's happening, and we're talking about reviewing an existing position description. It's really good HR practice to take people along with you rather than have them dig in against you because they don't like what you've put in the position description. So it might be that you sit down as part of the appraisal process and you know, make sure that that's reflected. So you can see we've put up, there's our website, www.ja.com, or you can access the template through LinkWest, and we did send out the Word version of the template itself so that you are fully available to open up that document. And
Sorry.
you're well.
Sorry, Rachel, to interrupt. I actually sent that out as a PDF, but what I'll do is I'll resend it as a Word document so that people can make changes to it.
Sorry, Mihaela, thanks for that. Yeah,
That's all right.
So you are more than welcome to use those. They're tried and tested. I should say too, when we move on to looking at unfair dismissals, for example, if we end up at arbitration, we're questioned by a commissioner, they're always a good thing to have as a foundation. So in anything that we do here, we will use those as the basis. So we've sent you that template and we're really happy for you to use those. They're tried and tested. I might throw over to you and Mihaela if there are any questions out there.
So any questions, anyone? Yes. Tanya.
I'm just wondering when we go to classify somebody under the SHADS system, whether they're level 1, 2, 3 or whatever, if they have already, say they've got a certificate in something or a degree in something that on that award would make them possibly say a level 3 or 4, but what they do in their job and you know, maybe they got that degree a long time ago and it might be a relevant degree for the position, but they don't live up to that degree. Are we under obligation to then put them at that level, or how does that work?
That is Sandra, is it?
Tanya.
Tanya, sorry. That's a great question. That's probably one of my favourite questions. So when I'm out delivering these workshops around the countryside, the example I use is if I advertise for a rocket scientist applies, I've obviously got to recognise that in the classifications. However, if I advertise for a receptionist and Mary comes along and she happens to have a degree in rocket science, then I'm not asking for that, so therefore I don't need to recognise it. But what I need to be really careful of, and I've been trying to be really clear with you, is if you then started to use some of the knowledge of that degree in that role, you could see you would open up the debate that actually, well, even though you didn't ask for a rocket science degree, you used part of that, therefore you need to recognise that classification. So the easy answer is you write that position description. That's why that's really key. You write in the qualifications, I expect that you blah or blah. Then you assess that position description. So again, remember I said to you, it's not about classifying the person who's come along, it's about classifying that position. So that's a fantastic question. You classify the role, therefore the person comes into that role. If you find that you are using that, then you may need to amend that classification, yeah.
Any other questions? I would say if anyone has anything, even if it's just a thought or something that, you know, applies to a situation you're currently in, this is a great opportunity for you guys to ask questions. So, Ami?
Yeah, sorry, I'm being a bit of a pain. I have a question with Fair Work. The information on Fair Work Australia is really convoluted, and much as we try and dissect what it actually means, we end up in circles. So, for example, we have a situation with maternity leave. So, who can we seek when we are in a situation where we need better advice or clearer advice? Even though we've got a clear job description, but while they've been on maternity leave, the job position changes, So it's now going to get difficult. So who's our resource? Sort of, I suppose, where do we go from here if can we speak to someone at Jobs Australia to support us, or what is our next step when we actually need help?
Sorry, Ami, I'll jump in on that one. I'll just stop sharing for a second. So if anyone, at the moment, after the session, there will be one-to-one support allocated to the CRCs, and priority will be given to CRCs that have actually taken advantage of the training and the resources. So that means that if you have anything that you would like to sort of, something that's more specific to you, and you want to take that up with Jobs Australia, I will be giving out information after the session. All you will need to do is just register for the one-on-one support, and you'll have 30 minutes with Jobs Australia to talk through any sort of specific issues that you have. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much so.
Okay.
I might just touch on that though, because we're a little bit ahead of time, I believe, Mihaela, is that right?
We are. We've got 10 minutes to go, so there's plenty of question time for everyone.
I'm happy to briefly touch on that for you though. So what I heard you say is that you had a role, while the person's been on maternity leave, the role has changed. Does that sound right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Depending on, and I'll give you a 30-second answer because it's rather difficult in this forum, but we're really looking at if a role changes, and it's really going to come down to whether that position description has increased, decreased, or stayed the same. If it stayed the same, it's usually just here's a new contract and off you go. If the role has increased or decreased, there's potentially a restructure and redundancy that's on offer. So that's probably the stuff that you're going to need specific advice around. If the job changes dramatically, you could actually kick in that process, just so you know. And you're right, I 100% agree. I liked your comment about the Fair Work Ombudsman or the Fair Work Commission's website. I work in that space on a daily basis, and I can't make head nor tail of what's on there. So it's good to get that advice,
So anyone else, any other questions or thoughts or feelings or experiences?
Is it legally binding? You know, your job description, can it be held up in court that says this is what you're employed as?
Not so much held up in court. The only time you see it is really if you end up at Fair Work. I mean, where we would usually see it, for example, is where we performance manage someone out, if that makes sense. 1, 2, 3, written warnings out the door. We then end up at unfair dismissal. Can you see the problem we might have if we said, well, we sacked you because you weren't answering the phone? If that's specifically in there, or if it's not written in a way that can be covered, then that might be a problem for you, and therefore that it doesn't mean that the PD was a problem, but it would then mean that the termination itself became harsh, unjust and unreasonable, and we'll look at that down the track. So it really lays the foundation. Just want to make that clear. It lays the foundation for the other stuff that you're going to build on top, so the contract, the performance management stuff. But like you've said, it's a really good way of rating people against their position description. And don't get me wrong, we work in a really negative space. As in here, I'm like the doctor. People don't ring me to say hi. You know, people usually ring me because, you know, it's gone to poop. So when we're talking about that, it's really about, well, before you get to that, getting their position description and giving some praise. Because I don't know about you, I've got kids, and I find that positive praise usually works much better than waiting until things get really bad and then trying to manage them that way.
Yeah. Oh, totally agree. And I mean, most community resource centres, I would work in a very positive environment. But there's always that, when it comes down to money, you have to put safeguards into place and make sure that for sustainable business and good business practices, we need to make sure that we're not looking at our current employees, we're looking at future employees that are going to take over those roles, and to safeguard that goodwill, in essence.
Yeah, like we said, updating PDs or looking at PDs job description, really gives you the opportunity to focus. Where is the organisation now? Where do we intend to take it? How can we make those PDs more reflective of where we need to be? So they're a really good tool and resource for that, yeah.
Yeah.
Rachel, sorry, a question from me. You mentioned that you have the sort of essential and desired criteria. Is it allowed, as it were, to leave that vague, to sort of wait and see what candidates you have? Because you might not know necessarily, who will show up to an interview. So you might put something, as essential, and then you don't get anyone. But if you just leave it a bit more vague and wait and see who turns up, then you might just have more option. Is that okay to do?
In some instances, it may not be a problem. I'm going to use a really silly example just to make us laugh. So for example, if I'm looking for a registered nurse, you can see that will skew whether I put it or not. So if there's something that you absolutely have to have, then you couldn't have that as desirable. We were talking about if I expect someone to have a degree in rocket science, well then I would have to put that under it's an essential item. For the bus driver, his essential item would have to be the drive, he must hold a current, Victorian driver's licence, current WA driver's licence. But you don't want to be putting out a position description when you advertise a job and then amending it when the person gets there, although you would be well within your rights to do that. I think it would come down to the organisation, you're right, sitting down and assessing what it is that they need, seeing that the candidates they get, and if they don't get the people that they want, then you might re-look at how you advertise at the same time. You're obviously always going to have, or not always, I shouldn't say, at times you'll have the essential criteria that you can't give up, and, the nurse, the bus driver, the driver's licence. But there are other areas, for example, if I'm talking about a receptionist, I may put that it's not essential that they know how to answer the phone, but it's desirable that they come with, a happy, bubbly personality, for example. And I'm using silly examples, but you see where I'm coming from. Because I can then teach them those skills when they come into the workplace. Or like a lot of us we have in-house computer systems. No one can know what those in-house computer systems and how they work. So I might write as desirable that you have an understanding of how to sign into a computer or how to use computer technology. Then really that's saying, well, okay, you know how to use a computer and I'll teach you the rest when you get here. Does that answer it?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much, Rachel.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you very much, Rachel, for the session. We appreciate it. As I mentioned, I will be sending out an email with information on how you register for the one-to-one support with Jobs Australia if you need that. Also, the next topic that we'll be covering, which again will be delivered by Jobs Australia, will be contracts, and that will be in November. And the process will be much the same as for this, and there will be an email and you guys can register. In the meantime, LinkQuest is here. You should have my number in the emails that I send. If you guys need any support or any information or any resources, please give me a call. I'm not just saying that, and we really are here to support CRCs and to sort of be as useful as possible. So if you've got any questions or any issues, give us a call. And even if we might not be able to answer directly, because we're not experts in everything, though that's very difficult, I know, to believe, but we will know where to point you. We will know who to direct you on to. Also, a little reminder, we will be sending out a little, very short, it's a 2-minute little evaluation of the session. And we're very grateful if you take the time to complete that. It really is essential for us to know that we are supporting you in the best way possible. So be honest, be as honest as you can. And it's the reason we're sending that out is so that we can, improve what we do. So that's it, everyone. Thank you very much. And yes, sorry.
Between
Angie, do you know the date in November when you'll have the one for contracts, please?
And what I will do is I will send you an email and let you know. I believe it's on the 9th or 15th of November.
The 9th, Mahala, yeah.
The 9th. There we go, the 9th.
Okay, I won't be here, that's a shame.
Don't worry, what we'll do is we will do the same thing that we did for this session. So we will record it and we will make sure, well, hopefully everyone will be okay with recording it, but we will record it and send it out to the CRCs afterwards as well. So if you're not able to attend, you will have access to a recording. Also, the same thing as with this, we will be sending out resources to all of the CRCs, so everyone will have access to the information. Is that okay?
Thank you, yes. Thank you.
Excellent.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for flying Air Australia and Link West. It has been a pleasure having you with us. I will now be dropping you off at your CRCs. If anyone thinks of anything, you know, after we've hung up, then just send me an email. I will pass it on to Rachel, and I'm sure we will figure it all out. So thank you very much, and I will see you guys shortly, I'm sure. I hope you all have a lovely day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
I don't know how to get out. I won't get out.
You just bring up the hand, just bring up the toolbar underneath and hang up the red phone. Just
yes.
at the end, yeah. Or Mahana will drop you off. See ya.
Bye.